Hey everyone, welcome to episode 49 of At the Coffee Table podcast. This is Jason Klink back with you, and today I am joined by Morgan Backus. Morgan, I wanted to bring on the podcast here today to bring a different point of view and some different values when it comes to health and wellness. Morgan takes a very holistic approach to her health and wellness service that she provides to her clients. And I thought it was super interesting. A lot of her content, she puts out a ton of content on social media that is super interesting. And I wanted her to speak on it on her behalf because I don't think I could do it justice. So Morgan, thank you for joining me here today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So you are a health and wellness coach, I guess, for lack of better terms.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I just feel like sometimes I think there's so many different kinds of coaches out there that it's kind of difficult because I wear many hats, right? So some
Right.
people think of me as a coach, some people think of me as like a spiritual practitioner, some people think of me as like the meal prep person, but I wear all these hats, and all in all, it's, my job is to help guide people through transitions and to reach goals and to look at things, like you said, in a holistic aspect.
So how would you, if you were, we'll call it a pitch, but how would you, like, you would explain to somebody like me that hasn't fully, maybe don't, I didn't fully understand what it is, or maybe it's a new introduction kind of situation. How would you, explain what you do day in and day out?
Right. So I guess one thing I don't do is like pitch, and maybe that's good, maybe that's bad, but
Right.
I think that I do put a lot of different content out there. So sometimes people will come to me with a question about nutrition. Sometimes it'll
Hmm.
be a life question. Sometimes it'll be a relationship thing. And then based off of whatever their current issue is, then I kind of take the lead of what area of focus that I could offer to them. So I have three main areas of focus: health and wellness, which is,
Hmm.
fitness and nutrition,
Right.
spirituality, and then new to my tool belt is financial services. So
Okay.
all of these impact us in a way. So what I do is I listen to their problems that they have. And to me, that's really important, the listening aspect, because a lot of people don't have that person that'll actually take the time to listen to them. And that's where I get all the information I need to make the most educated pitch or suggestion. And then from there, I'll listen. I'll maybe give them a tip if they're looking for some advice, and then I'll provide them with an option that I could help them with long term. So, between
Okay.
3 months or 6 months.
So it was interesting because I was reading your story on your website, and for people that don't know, her website's cleansingconsciousness.com. And I was reading through it, and what's interesting, you spent a little bit of time as a police officer.
Mm-hmm.
You're a mom. You have a young daughter, right?
Yeah.
And you had life throw you a curveball. Your mom passed, and kind of brought you to this point. Was that really the all of that kind of the catalyst to what you do now?
Yeah, I guess it should like go back a little bit. I've always been a very health conscious person, and
Hmm.
somebody who's always been aware of their nutrition and their fitness. And I've struggled too in the past as like an adolescent and a teenage female and somebody who actively participates in sports. So I had my own struggles. And when I went into policing, I saw a lot of other struggles that, officers and first responders were having, a lot on the nutritional side and what they have to go through mentally and emotionally. And I
Right.
loved being a police officer. I was really able um, to bring to life like the masculine side of me, and the command presence, and being able to take control and direct and do all those things that you would look
Right.
at an officer to do. And then I was starting to see that, the people that I was around, and just statistically, like the rates that you get for certain diseases and predispositions,
Right.
that was hitting me pretty hard. So when my mom passed away, um, it it kind of made me realize how short life was. And though I loved policing and I loved being in that position, I wanted to help people more on a different level. you help a lot of people as a first responder, and I just wanted to do more. I wanted to give more, and there's certain limitations that you have as as a first responder, and
Hmm.
I just love the one-on-one experience and really changing people's lives for the better. So I take the negative experiences that I've been through, that I've walked through, and I've had to overcome, and I
Yeah.
learn from that. And of course, I've paid for education and seminars and long education, and certifications, like all those things. I'm bettering myself. So when I meet those people who have been in my shoes, I can better help guide them, with firsthand experience. So it's really at the core, me really wanting to help people and make a difference in their life.
Yeah, it speaks a lot coming from public service and being in service of others. And I've talked about this before. I spent 25 years in public safety. I've seen the good, bad, and the ugly of the business. And I actually had a mental health awareness advocate for Syracuse Police on my podcast early on last year, just talking about how the mental health part of that industry for a number of years, if not decades, went ignored. And it's become more and more apparent how that's truly necessary to embrace that kind of part of your own overall health. Because in my opinion, without the mental health, it's tough to have the physical health, and the mental health really affects the physical health. I think that's accurate, right?
Yeah, and that's exactly how I approach coaching in general. Sometimes people will come to me with a goal or an obstacle, and they find out really soon that my approach isn't the normal approach. Usually, what we end up working on is something far different than what they assume we're going to be working on, because
Right.
our health and our wellness it's a whole, and everything will affect, just like it's a domino effect, like the ripple. You change one aspect and everything else is going to change. So sometimes the root issue may not be where you think it lies. It could be in a complete different area. So my
Right.
approach is really looking at everything as a whole,
Hmm.
and sometimes and oftentimes not starting where you think we're going to start.
Right. Right. Um, Now, I know a lot of folks, when they think spiritual, they think religious, which is not necessarily. I mean, they walk parallel to me. In my opinion, they walk parallel, but they're not typically the same thing. How would you explain embracing the spiritual part of health and wellness versus the rest of it, the food, the nutrition and the fitness?
Right. So I kind of associate spirituality with, whatever faith you have, or the driving force and the beliefs. So I kind of, I put your mindset in with spirituality, because usually, whether it's religion or, a certain form of belief or whatever denomination, it doesn't matter. But for the most part, we have a common belief or something that we feel is true for us. And I
Mm,
am 100%, along the same path as, to respect everybody and their own beliefs in their own way. I don't think that there's a one way to believe, or one specific thing, or that one thing is better than the other. I think spirituality to me is that driving factor, or that knowingness that you're following, that gives you that it's going to be okay, or I'm going to look to this for assurance when there's nobody else, or there's just me. There's something more out there, whether you want to call it God or source or the universe or creator or Allah, or
hmm.
a god or a goddess, or whatever you feel. It's
Right.
that it's that knowingness inside, and that desire to follow that or explore it if you're not really sure. And that's important too. I think knowledge is power. And I'm not religious per se, but I love learning about different religions and different beliefs, because I feel the more knowledge that I have, the more of an opinion or a belief I can formulate for myself.
So, just to draw from that a little bit, because a lot of the influencers that I've listened to, that I've learned from, and I've learned a ton in a short period of time, they talk about how knowledge is power, but the other part that some of them put in there is knowledge is power, but it's not any power until you put action behind it.
Yeah.
And they talk a lot about, with that action, you have to I've heard some say you have to like increase your own personal vibration within your space, that you have to increase your chances of being successful, to turn up the temperature in the room per se. If you're around the same group of individuals or associates or whatever it might be, and life is flat, that if you turn the temperature up in the room to get around folks that are vibrating, so to say, at a higher frequency, that tends to just expand your overall well-being. Am I close with that?
Yeah, I would say that that's 100% on track. And it can come from a lot of different aspects. Nutritionally, you can eat and consume foods that will change your vibration. Mentally,
Mm-hmm.
you can speak things out loud, say things to yourself, say things to other people that will raise your vibration. A lot of people think that, by asking for a certain thing, that that's going to come to us. But oftentimes, that's really just initiating the fact that there's a lack of that in your life. So, when we're talking about attracting abundance or changing our frequency, and where people seem to have an issue with it, is it's coming more from a place of fear and lack than to feel the emotion. So, the law of the universe, of the law of attraction in particular, is like
Mm-hmm.
attracts like. So to be rich and abundant, I would say, instead of looking at money as an enemy, look at money as a tool. And the end
Right.
game is you want to be free, you want to be confident, you want all those
Right.
things. So instead of
Right.
worrying about the tool and how to get there, focus on how can you create that feeling first. How doesn't really matter so much as what you want to be. So the more you can actually live in that state of
Mm-hmm.
emotion, the
Mm-hmm.
more that will come to you naturally. And it's kind of like a mind twist, right? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
how can I feel all these things if I feel like crap? Well, and that's the point of the process of looking and expanding and trying and applying it. So,
Yeah.
one of my spiritual practices is like I journal every single night, like religiously, like
Mm-hmm.
clockwork. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying, man, I wish I had this in my life, I say thanks for having this, or just showing appreciation, and then asking more for an opportunity. So not even saying like, man, it would be great if I had this, but more so, can you present me with an opportunity so I can take action? And sometimes those opportunities may not be the opportunities for you, but the fact that they're presented, and it's what you do with them. If you're either going to take the opportunity or not, that's showing energetically what you're willing to bring in and receive in your life. And that's another thing that I think a lot of us struggle with. We all know it feels really great to give, but
Yeah.
it's a lot harder to receive. So asking for help, taking a compliment, finding a quarter on the street and saying, "Oh, look at that! Abundance just fell into my life," and
There you go.
not being nitpicky about it, just accepting what it is, so more of that will flow to you. So I actually love that question.
Yeah, it made me think about, and I've talked about this before, for a long time, man, I was in a bad spot. And if you saw me in a setting, doesn't matter what, say you saw me walking down the street, hey, how you doing today? Terrible. My answer is always terrible, because mentally I was just in a bad place and really had no direction, no real cause, and no real drive. And then, slowly I made changes for myself, to where now if you saw me walking down the same sidewalk, how you doing? Great, fantastic. Doesn't matter what kind of day I'm having, I'm fantastic. Because it really seemed like that mind switch to, everything's good, and no matter what's going on today, everything's good, and this is what I'm putting out to the world. It made a huge difference for me, as quirky as it might sound.
I know, I think that's great. And I don't know if this is going to be a very popular opinion, but I think that we're meant to go through those tough, difficult times. And
Yep.
a lot of us try to repress that and push those negative emotions away. So if we're feeling guilty or upset or angry, instead of feeling those emotions or that time in our lives, we kind of suppress it, which, then manifests into physical ailments or just bad juju, right? So
Yeah.
the more
Yeah.
that we resist something, the more it's going to persist. And I found that my mindset has shifted a lot over the past 5 years. Whereas if a situation was to be presented, which would be very easy to view in a negative way. Flipping the script immediately and saying, well, how is this positively impacting my life? Or
Mm-hmm.
could this have gone a different way? And is this really the better way? And I think that in feeling those really crap moments, it allows us to see and feel ourselves at the lowest, and really for some people drive us to not be in that position again, and to prove to ourselves that, you know, we have somewhere to go. But when you're in that really dark space, it's really
Mm-hmm.
hard to see a light. So I think that
Oh yeah.
surrounding yourself with people who can uplift you, and putting
Mm-hmm.
yourself in the environment, you know, the 5 people that you surround yourself with are going to be, you know, who you're going to kind of resemble the most. But even on
Yeah.
social media, I think it's really, really important now to, if you're going through a hard time, I know that, you know, taking a breakup with social media has become a popular thing, which is great. But when you're on social media, when you're walking down the street and in your environments or work, trying the best that you can to surround yourself with people who are going to lift you up and be a positive role in your life. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we really can't control that, but the thing that we can control is how we react to situations. And, you know, just this morning I had somebody ask me about, you know, how to deal with somebody who's malicious towards them. And, you know, a lot of times things like that come from our own issues that we're having with ourselves. And they always tell you, as a business owner, don't take things too personally. Well, try not to take things too personally as an individual too, because, you know, nobody really knows what each person's going through. So the
Right.
one thing that we can control is ourselves.
Yeah.
But it doesn't make it any easier when you're in that dark spot. So just
Mm-hmm.
trying to surround yourself and ask for help too. Like sometimes our pride just wants to rule our life. And, you know, I can say that from experience. I got to the point for a while that I didn't want help. I was very independent, and I thought that that would make me weak by admitting something. But in reality, it made me stronger and a more well-rounded person to be able to know that that's okay. And who am I to say I want to go around helping people, but when it comes to me, I don't need the help either. So
Yeah.
embracing those times of darkness and those negative situations and shifting your mindset in a way that you can then turn around, and it's not going to be an overnight thing. It's not like you can
Mm-mm.
Google
No
like
way.
how to change your mindset and then, you know, in
Yeah.
24
Poof.
hours it's going to be great.
Yeah.
It's a constant journey, and I think that that's
Yeah.
the best part.
Yeah, 100%, you know, it really resonates. And I was just having a conversation here recently with a friend of mine, known for quite a while. And this friend is just struggling, just struggle, a lot of crap happening. And, um, you know, I was trying to give my best, trying to listen and then give my best advice. And, you know, I'm like, you have to be you and take care of you and find those healthy outlets to get everything that's up here out, no matter if it's writing, journaling, exercise. And I think this is what you embrace. And I've seen it, you know, over the last few years really work. And one of my favorite quotes from Ed Milet is, you know, life happens for you, not to you. And the first time I heard that, I was like, that's interesting. And I truly embrace that. I think life does happen for you, not to you.
Yeah, I agree.
So looking at with a lot of the content you do and you do the nutrition part of it, and it made me think of a guy I knew from years ago. It was a mutual friend with my brother. He was a all natural bodybuilder, and when we used to talk to him, he used to say, if it's got more than 3 ingredients, I don't put it in my body. And I back then, and this was a number of years ago, and I was like, well, that's interesting. So, you know, you start looking at at some of this stuff, and it's like, why does anybody? Now, I'm going to date myself, but I grew up in the '80s, and we microwaved everything, and we had all kinds of cheese came in a wrapper. You know, that was just the diet. You know, that because it was quick and easy. Everybody was busy. It was quick and easy, but it's easy to not understand that you're really kind of not doing yourself any favor by eating processed foods and all that all the time. I know a few years ago, my wife and I, you know, started a healthy eating trend where we got rid of a lot of garbage, and getting rid of a lot of garbage and eating more fruits, vegetables, you know, the breads with whole grains, all that stuff. We got rid of a lot of garbage weight. And I think you your content that you put out on that and the message that you even takes it to a whole new level.
Yeah. So I guess when we come to like the nutrition conversation, there's a million different ways to look at it. And, using myself as an example, I have done a lot of different things nutritionally. I've been my own experiment and guinea pig. And throughout the course of my life and the stages I've been through, I've been able to see what has worked and what role they play and how they influence me in other areas of my life. So, as a health coach, a lot of people kind of want you to be like, all right, tell me exactly what to eat. So at one point I would have been like, perfect. So you need to have this much protein, this much carbs. You need to cycle it on this day, eat it at this time. And that works for some people. And there's a time and a place for that. And that was me for a long, long time. I would count my macros. I would make sure that things were nailed right on the money, that I was very much in control of the aspect of my life that I could control when other areas of my life were not I was not in control of it. So when it comes to food and nutrition, there's a lot of different things that I look at. And I think we all know inherently what's good for us. Not junk, fruits, vegetables, water, sleep. We all know that, but how do we apply it, right? Everything, there's so many different things out there that look really shiny and pretty and it's all glittery and it's like, oh, this diet's great, that diet's great. Well, that's fantastic and that may work, but what's going to work for you is going to be very different than what works for your wife or your kids or your best friend or this person who naturally gained 25 pounds of muscle. And it's my mission to put the control back in my clients' hands. I know exactly how it feels like, and this comes from a spiritual aspect too, to want the questions or want the answers to the questions that we're seeking so bad that we're going to just grab at anything we can left and right. And we're going to try it. We're going to do it. And then nothing's really getting solved. It's just putting Band-Aids on the boo-boos or, making things look prettier on the outside. But really what's going on in the inside is a whole bunch of chaos. So being able to know that by giving away your power is, asking for all these things instead of kind of sitting with yourself and saying, okay, what is good for me? And it takes a lot of practice. And that's why I choose the spiritual things that I do for people and how I like to coach people, because I mean, we all look for structure in a way, but in what way do I know what's better for your body than what you know? So it's my job to ask the right questions, to give the right information, the right tools to make you go, aha, okay. So maybe it's not this that I want. Maybe I'm craving something very much different. And now my own brain can acknowledge that and process that. And it makes my why or that reason or what I'm going to be able to stick to that much stronger, because, what does Morgan know about my life and my health? I know, I've experienced it. I've done it. So I know this is or this isn't going to work for me. And then we talked about raising our frequency, and from a spiritual aspect, there's different things that we can do or acknowledge, and just to become more aware of what we're consuming. It's really crazy. For an example, my 8-year-old daughter, we were sitting down at the table, and I've got a really bad habit. My siblings, some of them have a bad habit of just shoveling food in our mouth, and then it's just like, okay, it's done. And then, my daughter, same way, like they're going to do what they see, right? So shoveling in her face. And, as a coachable moment for a mom, I said, hey, let's think about it this way. So I think she had cucumbers and strawberries. And I said, have you ever thought about where your food comes from? And she's like, well, no. And I said, well, somewhere somebody had to grow these strawberries. And then somebody else had to come and pick these strawberries. And then from there, somebody packed those in those boxes that we got, and they went on a truck and they got shipped to the store. And then a supermarket, somebody who works in the supermarket put that on the counter, and then we picked it up, and then the cashier rang it out, and then we drove home. So our food has traveled all this time and went through all these people. And then I could see the reaction where she's like, wow, that's a lot. And sometimes we tend to just want that instant gratification and not really think about where things come from, because sometimes it's more comfortable, or sometimes our life is too busy and we don't have time for things. So when it comes to food and what works for you, some of the first things I would say is to slow down and
Mm-hmm.
acknowledge where it comes from, or show a little gratitude for if somebody prepared it, or if you prepared it yourself, or if it's an animal product. I mean, it came from somebody or something. It has, some type of life in it. And just
Yeah.
to show that appreciation, the more that you can do that, the more that law of attraction is going to keep kind of rolling over in your life, and you're going to become more, abundant in other areas and have more gratitude. And it's just a ripple effect. Once you start working on one aspect, it's a catalyst for everything else. And that's why holistically, it's really important for me to, and I use some intuition and whatever spiritual things that I've learned throughout the course of my 30 years, to bring to my client. So that's
Mm-hmm.
what, when I see that spark, like I saw my daughter, that's what really makes me happy, is because I know I didn't have to say anything. It's something that they reflected on themselves. It gave them
Yep.
more confidence. It gave them more power. And they're way more apt to stick to that because they know it's true from a faith
Yeah.
perspective.
That's fantastic. And I've never really heard it quite put that way. And what an amazing connection with your daughter to be able to kind of connect the dots. And I think that's what it is connecting those dots and appreciating each dot, so to say.
Mhm.
Um, so what would be your biggest piece of advice for somebody that was looking to just make a change? They're not feeling great. Their life's not going great, whatever it might be. What is your biggest piece of advice just to start making some changes?
I would say do something that feels uncomfortable. Um,
Mm,
anything that feels super comfortable, you probably feel pretty sure about yourself. But
right.
whether you win or lose, you're making a change. So if it's something uncomfortable, something you're not used to, you're bringing something new into your life, and you're going to learn from it, whether that's something that's going to be positive or negative. And
Right.
that's another thing. Um, the villains that we play in our lives or in other people's lives, I think we get this idea that the most important people are the ones that bring us the most joy and all these things. But, for me personally, I can look at, the experiences or people or relationships that may not have felt great in the moment, but have changed my life in a catalytic effect that just triple, like, it made my life that much better in a way. So
Yeah.
making an uncomfortable change, an actionable change, something that you're
Hmm.
not used to, um what's the worst that can happen? You learn something from it, and then you pick
Right.
something else that's a little bit uncomfortable. When I first got into finances, I did so because I know what it's like to be not financially healthy. And
Hmm.
instead of looking at it like, man, I can't do this, this is a challenge. I'm going to learn something new. It's going to be hard, and
Yep.
I'm going to gain something from it. So I would say the first thing to do, if they don't know where to go, is just try something uncomfortable, whether that's a food, whether that's a mindset, whether that's, taking a new route to work, something to switch up your life, because we'll get in these habits and these routines that are just the same, repetitive over and over.
Yep.
But how do we expect change if we don't switch something up? So do something uncomfortable and do something different. The worst that can happen is you're going to learn a lesson.
You know what? I couldn't agree with you more because getting comfortable with being uncomfortable got me to this point right now, having this conversation with you is, getting comfortable with uncomfortable caused me to switch out of public safety. It caused me to switch to building my businesses that I have, to take on a different 9 to 5 job that I have, and to create this podcast. Because, I've probably said it 50 times that if it wasn't for the pandemic lockdown, I may or may not have jumped off the cliff to do this podcast. So I
Yeah.
can completely embrace getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, because that's where a lot of my own personal growth has come from. Just doing that, and you're 100% right on with that piece of advice. So, Morgan, I appreciate you joining me here today. What is the best way for people to connect with you, either on social or otherwise?
Yeah, honestly, I would say you can go to the Conscious Sage, on Facebook, or just send me a message on my personal page, Morgan Backus. And from there, if you've got a question or something going on and I can help you, I would love to connect with you.
That's fantastic. And, you know, if you can't seem to find Morgan, which would be tough to do, but if you can't seem to find Morgan on social, feel free to reach out to me, leave a comment in the on the podcast here, and I'd be happy to connect with you. Morgan, thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate your time, your insight. It's been fantastic. We'll have to do it again here real soon.
Thanks, Jason.
All right, guys, this is the At the Coffee Table podcast, where we sit down at the virtual coffee table and discuss a little bit of everything and anything, and hopefully bring some value to anybody that's listening. Like I said, feel free to, you know, comment and share this with anyone that you might get any value out of this. And with that, everybody take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and have a great day.